So good evening, everyone. My name is Ramona Gönzel, and I'm very happy to welcome you here to tonight's event. I'm an associate professor in Romanian language here at SEAS, and the co-founder and convener of the PROLang research group. I'm also the academic coordinator for online language evening class program. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight, and thank you to all the speakers for your presence. I just want to say a few words about PROLang. PROLang stands for Policy, Research, Outreach in the field of language-based area studies, with particular focus on languages of the Central, Eastern, and Southeastern Europe and the Baltic region that we cover through our degrees and evening classes. We offer a total of 18 languages from the region. PROLang is a one-year-old, interdisciplinary initiative set up to represent and bring to spotlight language-based area studies in an outward-looking way. The event tonight opens the new academic year series of events. Please follow our page, if possible, and subscribe to our newsletter for more events. The PROLang aims are to provide a forum for colleagues from the UK and partner universities and beyond to collaborate on interdisciplinary research topics with languages at the core, to interact with policymakers, practitioners, and the public in order to aid and inform wider debates in language-based area studies and cultural, economical, political, and sociological research, to ensure that languages remain in focus in the post-Brexit landscape, to pay special attention to decolonizing the curriculum for language courses by ensuring minorities of any kind are well represented, as well as to create balanced multiple centers of interest, to increase the esteem of SEAS as a global leader in the language-based area studies. I will now say a few words about this evening's event. Macedonian language is the latest addition to our range of language offer. We started the course 4 years ago. Despite the fact that Macedonian language cannot attract huge numbers of learners, as the entire community in the UK is probably in the region of hundreds, we are very happy to see how Ana managed to grow the course and add a new level year on year. We are now running 3 levels in Macedonian, which is a great success. We also want to thank the Embassy of North Macedonia for the generous textbook donations that they make every year to our language students. Our speakers tonight, in order of presentation with no hierarchy, are Ms. Biljana Gligorova, who is the Charge d'Affaires and Minister Counsel at the Embassy of the Republic of North Macedonia. We are happy you accepted to attend this event and generously brought food and wine, which we are very much looking forward to tasting later. Dr. Ana Ilievska, who is our first Macedonian language teacher for the evening class program. She's also a translator and chartered language consultant with expertise in Macedonian and Slovene languages. Ana is a founder of Language Yoga, School of Macedonian and Slovene Language, as well as the organizer of walk and talk sessions for language professionals. Her commitment to advancing the field of linguistics is further demonstrated by her role as a member of council at the Chartered Institute of Linguists, and she's a great and much-loved teacher. Ms. Aleksandra Miovska is a former extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassador of North Macedonia to the United Kingdom up until 1 year ago. She's a professional diplomat working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs since 1995, currently the director of the cabinet of the foreign minister. During her last term in the UK, Ambassador Miovska co-founded the Macedonian language course here at SEAS, together with the SEAS short course team. On behalf of the Embassy of North Macedonia, Ms. Miovska has made a generous donation of books to the SEAS library on several occasions, both during the inauguration of the course and throughout its existence. Professor Aneta Ducevska is a professor and dean at the Blaže Koneski Faculty of Philology with the St. Cyril and Methodios University in Skopje. She teaches Macedonian language courses for graduate and postgraduate students and has been an academic advisor for numerous graduate papers, MA and PhD dissertations. She has also been teaching Macedonian for foreign learners and published 2 textbooks for the advanced level. Professor Emeritus Dr. Victor Friedman is Andrew Mellon Distinguished Service Professor Emeritus in the Department of Linguistics and the Humanities Division, University of Chicago, and Honorary adjunct at La Trobe University. He's a foreign member of 3 national academies of sciences, Albania, Kosovo, and the Republic of North Macedonia, as well as Matica Srpska. I hope I pronounced correctly. Srpska. His book, The Balkan Languages, co-authored with Brian Joseph, will be published by Cambridge University Press in 2024. This is a crucial time for the whole world to connect and collaborate long-term through educational endeavors that impact our world. And this is what we're doing tonight for Macedonian language and culture in the UK. We will have a question and answer session at the end. For the audience online, please type your questions in the Q&A box and we will answer them at the end. We're also recording this event. And it is a pleasure to be here with all of you tonight, and thank you for presenting through PROLang. Biljana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Ramona. Thank you all for coming this evening. I would like to thank Ramona and CIS for organizing this gathering. And according to our knowledge, this is the first ever event at CIS dedicated to the Macedonian language. So we are very grateful for that. So we've got really close cooperation with CIS. We try to encourage the students that are willing to learn Macedonian language, in a different ways by organizing small events like the last one, which was in our new premises this May. So the group of students in Macedonian language participated at the event, which was in order to mark the centenary of the birth of Macedonian poet Aco Šopov, who is a well-known Macedonian poet who has left an enormous footprint in the affirmation of the Macedonian language and poetry worldwide. So at this event, and I can see some of the students are here, so poems were read into Macedonian language, and students, they did a good job in terms of practicing their speaking skills into Macedonian language. So in this sense, the role of Professor Ana in bringing the Macedonian language and with love and enthusiasm to the students' heart is crucial. So thank you, Ana, for doing this job. So we are, as an embassy, we are continuing with donations to the CIS library. So where the students can enrich their knowledge in terms of the country, culture, tradition, etc. So next week, we are about to donate and to hand over a new donation to CIS library. So thank you once again. This is just a short intro to Ambassador's Mioska intervention, who will speak about her work, about her role in the Macedonian language courses. So thank you all. Ambassador.
Thank you, Ramona. Thank you for the invitation and for the warm introduction. Thank you, Biljana. Our work as diplomatic representatives of our country connects us, me and Biljana, as diplomats, as does our love for our mother tongue, the Macedonian language. I'm glad that this PROLang event is happening this evening, today, in the year when we mark 30 years since the establishment of the diplomatic relations between the then Republic of Macedonia and the United Kingdom. Today, the UK-North Macedonia relationship is well established, multifaceted, and thriving. North Macedonia values the United Kingdom as a close and reliable friend, NATO ally, and a very important European partner. Dear friends, you know, Macedonian is a Slavic language and our greatest spiritual and cultural heritage. We owe it to our ancestors to preserve its uniqueness and to future generations to secure its legacy. So I, as ambassador, and the embassy have placed a significant focus on promoting the language, Macedonian language, there in the United Kingdom. Greetings from Skopje, I forgot to mention. I'm proud of re-establishing cooperation with UCL, School of Slavonic and East European Studies, UCL CIS, and of reintroducing Macedonian evening course in 2019. Almost 18 years since the last one. That would not be possible without the support of the UCL CIS, for which I'm infinitely grateful. The main motive for the revival of the evening courses was not only to spread the beauty of the Macedonian language and to introduce others to that beauty, especially those who have Macedonian partners or friends, but to make new friends in Macedonian for lasting friendship. What has been created is not a huge, but I believe it is a beginning that promises that soon the studies of the Macedonian language can also be found at academic level in the United Kingdom. Therefore, when I took office in 2018, one of the highest priorities set for my job as an ambassador of North Macedonia to the UK was to revive an evening courses of the Macedonian language at UCL CIS. I will not say that I'm satisfied. I will say that I'm happy, very happy. I am happy. When I met Ana's students, Philip, Konrad, Stefan, Emma, Malcolm, John, I knew my efforts were in the right direction. Also, I know how much this program means to all Macedonian citizens in the United Kingdom. I thank everyone at UCL CIS who invested in my efforts and recognized, valued, and respected the importance of this program. I would like to thank Ana for the passion and skill with which she brings the study of Macedonian language closer to those who want to learn it. I witnessed this directly on several occasions, even online during pandemic. I was a special guest in their classes several times. CIS has been extremely supportive and welcoming in promoting and teaching the course and our culture, Macedonian culture. The program offered by CIS builds a very much needed bridge between my country and the United Kingdom and contributes to the understanding of North Macedonia abroad and to learn more about Macedonian language. By introducing the Macedonian course, CIS made a significant contribution to the promotion, not only the teaching and learning the language, but the culture too, which is very important. The growing Macedonian community, including the mixed British Macedonian families in the UK, are benefiting tremendously from the opportunities CIS offers to learn the language and culture. This course also offers the business community the opportunity to learn Macedonian language and culture to help with any expansion plans they may have for my country. Learning Macedonian in the UK for us Macedonians has another great symbolism and meaning. Namely, that is a language on which late Goran Stefanovski produced the biggest part of his legacy as a leading Macedonian dramatist, screenwriter, essayist, lecturer, and public intellectual who lived in Canterbury, Kent, for the last 2 decades of his life. Stefanovski created equally in Macedonian and English with equal artistic passion. Unfortunately, he died in Canterbury in 2018. Another connection between the United Kingdom and North Macedonia in the field of poetry are Ted Hughes and Dame Carol and Duffy. After Ted Hughes in 1994, Dame Carol and Duffy is the second British citizen to become the holder of the biggest poetry award given in my country, the Golden Rate of the Struga Evening of Poetry, an event that has world rank. Their work, the work of Hughes and Dame Carol and Duffy, is translated in Macedonian language too. In this world that is changing at a tremendous speed, in which many of my compatriots have left the country due to migration for a better life, it is emotionally important for us as Macedonians that the new generations master the Macedonian language, because every person has roots. And the language is that, a root. And learning any language plus is an asset. My term ended a year ago in September. And if you ask me about my fondest memories as ambassador to the UK, I will answer honestly. This experience is one of my fondest memories. UCL, CIS, Macedonian evening courses. The new ambassador of North Macedonia will soon arrive in London. I'm confident that she will be an equally strong supporter to this legacy. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm open for every question later on. Thank you.
We will now let Ana take us into.
So many spoilers, so many spoilers. I wanted to start.
You can.
I'm thrilled that we have this kind of event here at the CIS UCL. Finally, we can talk about Macedonian language. Many thanks to Ramona and the PROLang platform, because without you, we wouldn't have this event. But also to my students, a couple of them are there. So thank you, because without you, we would not have a course and also events. So, and of course, I need to mention our wizard, our financial wizard, Mukesh, who plays with numbers each time someone of my students apply for the language. And thank you to me as well for accepting this job as a teacher. It's not a very easy one. I would like to greet Professor Ducevska for coming all the way from Skopje to be here with us from the beautiful Skopje, which in 2028 is going to be the European capital of culture. How about that, guys?
Wow.
Yes, and also for Biljana, thank you so much for all of your help. And thank you for the ambassador Miovska and Professor Victor Friedman joining us online. Now all thank yous and everything. So we shall start. So kako se započna? From now on, just Macedonian. Can you follow? No. Okay. I remember the day in 2019. It was 2nd of April. When someone from the Defense Academy contacted me, and she said, Ramona, our teacher, is asking for Macedonian teachers for a role. And I was thinking, Macedonian? Are you sure? It's not Slovene, Macedonian? She said, yeah, pretty much, I'm sure that is going to happen. So, of course, I contacted Ramona, and they advertised the language and everything. So some of us applied, right? And after a rigorous interview, I got the job, yes.
Luckily, it wasn't the 1st of April.
Yeah, it was 2nd. That's why I said it was 2nd. So we didn't have any students at that time. So we needed to advertise the event. We needed to bring some students. We needed to start a recruiting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Process. So that's why I involved the Embassy of the Republic of North Macedonia to help me, and just to get more students so we can start finally this course. Also, I was gluing some leaflets at the park, but this result just me not getting a rest, nothing else. So, and the embassy is kindly provided, as Ramona said, textbooks for my students. They know the great textbooks with beautiful pictures and everything, right? So yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, the work is now followed by Biljana Gligorova, our lovely charge d'affaires, if I pronounce it correct. I was so excited when we finally started this language course, and when I wanted to pick up my card from Andrew Huxley. Yeah, I wrote an email to the HR and I said, can I wrote to this guy and ask them if I can come earlier? Their reply was very British and kind, and they said, Andrew Huxley building closes at 4:30. I was excited, so I didn't know that it's a building. I thought that it was a guy. Yeah, well, it happens. So we started with one group of beginners, and one of them is sitting there, Philip. So he's still with me and a couple of others, but thank you for coming today. And the profile we have, those are people who love Macedonian, not language, Macedonian person. So some of them are married and they have some connection. So we started the language course and boom, pandemic kicked. This is an evening course, so you need to entertain students so they could not run away because it happens. And also, once they stop with their job and come to this course, they need to do the homework as well. So we need to entertain them hardly. And also, we recruited different students from, because I'm basically connected with the Seminar of Macedonian Language and Culture. They are providing 2 scholarships for my students. So if someone wants to visit beautiful Ohrid, because they organize summer school every year for the last 56, I think, almost 56. So if you want to visit beautiful Ohrid, free of charge, everything paid, come to my course. Okay, and then how we advertise the language. People ask, why Macedonian? Well, my answer is, why not? It's the simplest South Slavic language. No, someone is laughing there. No, it's not that simple. Okay, but yeah, it's like, it is a simple. Start studies of something else, you will see. There are some grammar bits which are really hard, but they are learnable, so you should be fine. And also, it's a great portal to other South Slavic languages as well. So, and you will have a secret language and a script. And once combine the Cyrillic alphabet with some calligraphy, you can write a beautiful birthday cards, maybe, if someone knows how to read them. Also, people in North Macedonia, they're going to treat you as a king or a queen because you are speaking the language. Still not convinced? Well, I convinced at least some of people, because we have 3 groups, as Ramona, spoilers, darling, but we have now 3 groups. So challenges are not just with recruiting people, but also with learning and teaching the language, because there are not many textbooks or podcasts or whatever online. So I need to really be resourceful, and I need to really find something which is useful so I can implement that. And as a teacher of Slovene language as well, that is a bliss and a curse at the same time, to see how much they did in that field, how many books they have. But I'm open for suggestion. I think that some of Macedonian teachers are online. So if you have anything, please do let me know. But I need to check the materials first, because, you know, some are full of patriotic emotion. So being a teacher is really a responsible job, especially if you're presenting not just the language, but the country as well. People are seeing you as an avatar to that country, and they are also describing you some characteristic. And you need to really be extra cautious how you are going to represent some things. As we know, Slavic languages, they have interesting path. Professor Friedman is going to tell more about that. And people are always asking, is it a language? Is it a dialect? What about, are they mutual intelligible? Or what about Serbian and Croatian? Do not go there, is a vicious circle, I'm telling you. So many teachers are really caught up with this prejudice and stereotypes and everything. So history is for historians. I'm here for the language. And also, as long as you are not calling it North Macedonian language, you should be fine. I prefer to live in the present, but not just like, you know, the Japanese term, mindfulness, ikigai, but, you know, just forget about the future and the past, of course, not about the future. Do bear in mind the future, because it's so much unpredictable. And also, so let's cherish that there is another language at the seas, and just be happy about it. That's it from me. I won't be long. Any questions, refer them to Professor Ducevska and to Professor Friedman, because this is the first time I'm not alone in the classroom, so they can take all of the questions. And I will just finish with one quote. So it's mine. Learning a language is like learning to eat with chopsticks. At first, you will taste just a little food, and then you will be very hungry and eager to eat more, while everything around will become a really mess, food everywhere. But with some good practice and effort, you can master it, and at the end, you can enjoy the full flavor of it while using them. So thank you very, very much for coming all together here, and thank you for all the guests online. And keep turning my head.
Yeah, don't worry.
So thank you all.
Thank you.
Ooh, I'm done.
So, Professor
Professor
Ducevska,
Ducevska.
if you want to.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good evening to all present tonight to our event, dear colleagues here in London and in Skopje and elsewhere, dear guests, dear friends. It's an honor and pleasure for me to talk today about Macedonian language here at SEAS, the place where 23 years ago, the launching of the Macedonian evening courses happened for the first time at UCL. And I was selected to be the person from my university, the St. Cyril and Methodius University in Skopje, to be the first lecturer or teacher fellow at that time, and to participate in setting up the courses. And I remember the then director of SEAS, Professor Michael Branch, not with us anymore, as I learned of his passing away just recently, may he rest in peace. So then he said to me, oh, don't worry, we'll put a sign. Who wants to learn Macedonian, please queue in. And that's it. Indeed, I know that the queuing never happened, but I know how important it is to sow the seed. So many thanks to the visionary Professor Branch and SEAS and the UCL for including Macedonian on the list of languages taught at SEAS and never giving up, also to the Embassy of North Macedonia being involved so generously and in the matter of Macedonian courses here at SEAS, although there were empty stretches of time and not a consistent effort on both sides. And we're here today, again, now with the first official event for Macedonian language together with our lecturer now, Ana Ilievska, and all our guests. Thank you, Ramona, again for doing this. And so we're going to talk, we are talking about Macedonian language. Actually, we're talking about the youngest of all Slavic languages, yet the beginning for all of them, influenced by many, yet idiosyncratic, at times the elephant in the room, yet slowly and steady evolving, finding its way with the speakers, the learners, the teachers, the researchers. So let's talk about this language. Mainly, I'm focusing on 5 points, 4 to 5 points, the main linguistics features to start with, then something about culture and sociology, and then about the classrooms, the teaching, the books, and things like that. Following World War II, Macedonia became a federal republic within the Yugoslav Federation, and Macedonian was recognized as the official language of the then People's, and shortly after that, Socialist Republic of Macedonia. This was one of the first decisions of ASNOM, which is the Anti-Fascist Assembly for the National Liberation of Macedonia, which was the supreme legislative and executive people's representative body of the communist Macedonian state from August 1944. But the recognition of the Macedonian language should not be interpreted as a political interference in language matters. but as a correction of an old injustice inflicted upon the Macedonian nation, as we believe to be true. In his Guide to the Slavonic Languages from 1951, published here in London, Reginald de Bray writes, by an irony of history, the people whose ancestors gave to the Slavs their first literary language were the last to have their modern language recognized as a separate Slavonic language, distinct from the neighboring Serbian and Bulgarian. It is estimated that Macedonian is spoken by approximately 2 million speakers in and out of the Republic of North Macedonia. The Macedonian standard language owes its characteristics to its origin from the family of Slavic languages and also its affiliation to the Balkan language area, that is the Balkan Sprachbund, as well as its involvement in European cultural history. Also, those characteristics are closely related to the historical conditions in which Macedonians' native speakers were, and to their contacts with speakers of other neighboring and non-neighboring languages. In this sense, it's estimated that there are about 4,000 Turkish borrowings, or as we call them, Turkisms in Macedonian, which is the largest number of loan words from another language in Macedonia. So something about the linguistics part of Macedonian, as already something was Ana announced about the peculiarities and interesting stuff. So I'll say some other more features interesting about our language, while compared to the Old Church Slavonic or Proto-Slavonic in Macedonian. Macedonian has a relatively simplified vocal and consonant system. Its alphabet follows a phonemic principle, which means that each letter corresponds to a single phoneme and words are pronounced as they're spelled. There are 31 letters in the alphabet, 5 vowels, 7 sonorants, 19 consonants, out of which the consonant Z is a unique feature. No other Slavic language has it. The stress is fixed antepenultimate, which is the third last. It moves automatically as the number of syllables increases, and there are lexical exceptions with penultimate and final stress, usually the unadapted borrowing. The case relations of nominals are expressed analytically with prepositional or other syntactic constructions. Because Macedonian has lost most of the Proto-Slavonic cases, and what is kept is number one, nominative oblique vocative with nouns, but with tendency of dropping off non-nominative forms. And second, nominative accusative dative only with pronouns. Macedonian is the only Slavic literary language that combines the category of definiteness and deixis with 3 series of spatial and temporal distinction, the unmarked T, proximate V, and distal N formations. Morphologically, these formations are present in demonstratives with complete paradigm in gender and number, and in the definite article, which is a suffix attached to nouns, to nominals, again with full paradigm in gender and number. The preposition na, which is of, to, add, can have primarily a local and emotional meaning, but it also has a grammatical meaning because it marks the indirect dative object and possession genitive. The category of comparison with adjectives and adverbs is expressed analytically again with comparative markers O and 9. Then the infinitive and the supine again are completely lost. Their equivalent in Macedonian is actually, there are 2 ways to cover for these 2 forms, the infinitive and the supine with the verb. The first is a so-called da construction consisting of the particle da plus a finite verb, and which is used often used and mainly with modals and inchoative verbs, as well as with verbs of will and effort. And the second one, the second option is a prepositional phrase with verbal noun as an equivalent for the supine meaning mostly. Macedonian has a complex system of verb tenses and forms. So from a morphologically simplified nominal system to a morphologically complex verbal system. I'm not a teacher. So from really a morphologically very simplified nominal system, but then to a morphologically complex verbal system, Macedonian maintains distinctions for several verbal categories with complete paradigm in person and gender for the synthetic forms like the present imperfect aorist tense, then for the auxiliaries to be and to have, plus the active participle for the perfect tenses, and for the analytic forms, that is the hypothetical potential and expected future conditionals. So the categories present with the Macedonian verbs are also aspect, fully grammaticalized, witness reported opposition, transitivity, and voice. Definite and sometimes specific indefinite direct objects and all indirect objects are reduplicated with clitics pronouns with the verb phrase agreeing in gender, number, and case with the object. And then this word order of these clitics, they all precede the verb in declarative sentences, and the maximum stretch number of clitics is 6, as I counted them in the following order. So we have the subjunctive particle, then the negation, then the future particle, then the auxiliary, dative object, and accusative object, and the verb. So this is really a challenge to master this word order of the clitics. And vocabulary or lexicon, the latest edition of the official dictionary issued by the Institute of Macedonian Language in Skopje says it contains 100,000 entries. The sources for these words are various and of different periods. An extensive description and dating can be found in many studies. For now, I can say that the main source for the Macedonian lexicon is its dialects, then other Slavic languages, the South Slavic ones primarily, then the Balkan group with Turkish leading and Greek, Albanian, and Aromanian following, and the last, the Western group with English leading and Italian, French, German following. This diversity of sources from which we borrowed words is a good introduction to the second point of my presentation, and that's to say something about culture and sociology of Macedonian. As we all know, language is most closely related to culture and sociology, primarily because of the role that language plays in society. In this regard, we can talk about dialects, sociolects such as slang, jargon, and functional stylistic variations. Historically, if we follow the cultural and social development of the Macedonian state, it is almost directly reflected in the language. For example, from the beginning of the independent state within the Yugoslav Federation, and we are talking the 40s and the 50s of the 20th century, when the founders of the social and cultural establishment used a language largely influenced by their native dialects and by the acquired other languages via education, primarily Bulgarian and Serbian, and until the end of the 80s, when the then Serbo-Croatian language became the language of the community, with a serious hiatus of a prestigious language throughout the Federation, especially in Macedonia. It is interesting to say that these influences were not registered in the norm, in the standard language, and remained at the level of sociolects and idiolects, and in the spoken language. In fact, the standard has undergone very little change since its codification. So it very strictly and closely adheres to the principles laid down in the resolutions of Oslo back from the 1944, and a few years later, the 50s, when the publication of the first grammars, dictionaries, and spelling prescriptive instructions manuals took place. This position led to a big gap in the variety of Macedonian language, from a closed, rigid, and inflexible standard to a very rich and colorful colloquial language, the vernacular, mostly at the lexicon level, but also at the level of grammar. And the representative of the language policy establishment, the academic institutions, individuals like writers, cultural workers, academia, they were surprised, they were baffled by this situation and not being able, not knowing or lacking the courage and vision for all of the three to follow that rapid development of Macedonian in its everyday use by its speakers. Me, myself, I was then a young MA student and a teaching assistant, and I remember it well. And then, in the end of the Yugoslav Federation and with the beginning of the new independent Macedonian state, so we are talking 90s, the beginning of the 90s, Macedonian embarked on a new adventure. Strong, deep contact with the English language through direct sources such as media, the cultural domains of film, music, literature, and mostly with the dramatic and expressive development of information technology, of new communication models in general, of new paradigms of life in the world in general. So the freedom and comfort, the ease of adopting foreign words and expressions, which allow them to converse more easily and effectively, was widely accepted by Macedonian native speakers. Without anyone supervising and channeling it, this situation led to more serious disturbances in the fundamentals of what was considered to be the nature, the essence of Macedonian, its vocabulary and structure, especially in children of early school age. But on the other hand, it also led to an appealing creative solutions in the fields of marketing, designs, and cultural industries in general. And again, we don't know what to do. We have to start fixing things. Fortunately, less than a decade ago, the mechanisms of educational and cultural policies have started their engines. So we can say now that there are efforts and activities being undertaken, setting the balance between what is the norm and what is in the identity card of Macedonian, though still the same old steel base from the last century. And what is its living realization, the language in use at all levels. For example, lately, we've been getting much better quality literary translation from foreign languages into Macedonian. And also the state passed a new law for the use of Macedonian. And we still have a lot of work to do, especially since we've seen the legal framework is not helping very much. And in my opinion, what will help is a dedicated and continuous building and developing of what we have as a foundation, as a base. But also thanks to the creative and innovative potential of Macedonian native speakers, which they acquired through free and open borrowing from other languages, today we see, for example, the use of dialects for naming activities from everyday life, the official events like the marathon, for example. We have the annual event, which is called the Skopje Marathon, it's everywhere. But also regional marathons, for example, are named using dialect variation of the city in which they're held. And that's very cute to see and to hear. So, and it really is very creative in that sense. Back to the third, and now going to the third point, something about the classrooms and the teaching. So where can you learn Macedonian, basically? Aside from a compulsory subject in primary and secondary education as a mother tongue, that is as Macedonian language and literature, Macedonian is the oldest study program offered at the universities in North Macedonia. To begin with the oldest one, my university, the St. Cyril and Methodius in Skopje, with the Faculty of Philology and the founding department, the Department of Macedonian Language, which I'm affiliated to. Also, this program is offered at other universities, HT, Tetovo, and Pitola. The BA diploma from these studies mainly provides qualifications for teaching professions, but there are also some for non-pedagogical professions also. Then Macedonian is present in the syllabi of other philological programs, foreign languages, literatures, translation and interpreting, where it has the status of a compulsory course. This applies, all this applies to the undergraduate level. At the graduate and doctoral level, students can research, write theses, articles, etc. Also at universities and at the two national institutes in Skopje. The one is the Institute for Macedonian Language and the other is the Institute for Macedonian Literature. There you can do a PhD studies on a broader study program called Macedonian Studies, then, which includes not only language, but also literature and culture. So all of this goes for the native speaker of Macedonian language. What is more interesting for us today is what is offered to foreign students of Macedonian. Macedonian language for foreigners is the most common phrase you will come across if you research in this field. This is the name of the course offered at the university, as well as in the private foreign language schools. The demand for Macedonian as a foreign language in Skopje, above all, but also in other cities, is quite high. Because in the last 2 decades, the number of foreigners staying short or long term in North Macedonia has increased rapidly. Also, in the last 10 years, there has been an increasing interest of foreign students studying something in North Macedonia. And in that case, they must complete a 1-year course in Macedonian and obtain a certificate for, I think, at least B1 level according to European framework. And as well as students who come and students who use mobility grants through Erasmus Plus programs to European programs for shorter or longer stays at the universities. Institutionally, the main places that are in charge for these courses and the exams are the Macedonian Language Department, then the Center for Testing and Certifying within the department at our Slavic Faculty of Philology, and number 2, as Ana mentioned, the International Seminar for Macedonian Language, Literature and Culture, which is an office within the rector's office of my university, and which was founded 55 years ago, 56 will be next year. And since then has been organizing the 3-week seminar in Ohrid every year in the month of August. So please, you're welcome to apply for this. It's a very pleasant experience. These summer courses I primarily offered to students from European Slavic centers, but also from other continents, UK to start with, and the US, Canada, and Asia. Among other activities of this international seminar are recruiting and sending lecturers and teachers to the foreign university, publishing textbooks and manuals, organizing conferences, etc. Also, the Macedonian Slavic Committee, a member of the International Slavic Committee, which works with subcommittees for narrow areas of Macedonian studies, engages in promotion of Macedonian in the country and abroad. So this was the outline about studying Macedonian as a foreign language in North Macedonia. So what is going on outside of North Macedonia at an academic level? Macedonia is studied at a dozen universities in Europe. And at the moment at the one in the United States and the Arizona State University in Tempe, and there is one program running in Beijing, China, at the University for Foreign Languages there. These courses are primarily intended for students in the BA programs who can choose Macedonia as an elective subject there, or as summer elective courses or evening courses here at CIS. The 2 oldest centers that continuously offer Macedonian are in Moscow at the Lomonosov University and in Paris at the INALCO, the Institute for Oriental Studies. In these 2 centers, Macedonian is offered in a full BA and MA program. Students show the most interest in Poland, where historically Macedonian was offered in more than 1 universities, and also in Czech Republic and Slovakia. Then in the centers of the former Yugoslav Federation, of course, first of all, Slovenia, Croatia, and Serbia. Among the non-Slavic centers, Budapest and Istanbul stand out, where Macedonian has been studied for 3 decades with a significant number of students. Strategically and future-wise, questions of development and upgrading these courses and increasing the interest for learning Macedonian should be addressed with careful planning and open minds for the new outlook of things. In my opinion, for example, the first steps in this direction would be designing a good quality online courses through or multilateral partnerships among universities, through capacity building projects for language instructors and mobility grants for students who visit the country. They are not Macedonian in our case. There are some ongoing projects for creating MOOCs, the massive online open courses at my faculty, but that's only for foreign languages. And of course, their findings and results could be useful for Macedonian as well. Still, the attempts in this sense are sporadic, I can say so far. So a fresh and new, innovative and structured approach is much needed. And I'd be happy to discuss these issues with PROLang, of course, right after the event or in the near future. And the last point, the books, also Biljana and Ana said something about the donations, and we're going to keep doing that without any problems. For that topic, I'd like to say something about I'd like to point out the new emerging literary translations. Literary translations, as one of the most accessible instruments for upgrading and enriching the lexical and word formation stock of a language, has a long history in Macedonia. And there is a huge production of translation of works from other languages into Macedonian, both classics and new, award-winning, well-known, lesser-known works of world literature are being translated. The most important thing to mention in this regard is that, unlike in the past, when we could not boast of quality translations into Macedonian, for different reasons from every aspect, from poorly executed translation craft or its absence or bad editorial decisions, in the last 10 years, these situations have significantly improved. Currently, there are many quality young translators who approach translation with dedication and professionalism. And publishing houses and editors work much more seriously. Also, presenting this new translation to the readers is also taking new dimension through the new digital marketing opportunities, as well as the good old forms of live promotions. And one important thing also, more and more Macedonian authors are being translated into other languages. For example, authors like Lidija Dinkovska, Guce Smilerski, Rumena Bužarovska, Petar Andonovski, to name a few, and also new young authors who are on the rise. I think these translations can be very useful as additional teaching materials and resources for Macedonian, of course, for the higher levels and especially for translation subject, but this is really worth noting. This is very, very good thing happening. So all in all, my final thoughts, all in all, learning Macedonian in North Macedonia or abroad can be a very nice experience. Linguistically, it's an interesting language that will create difficulties for you at the beginning, according to me, but then you will navigate more easily until you fully master it. So the beginning is a little bit tricky. Then it gets trickier.
But manageable.
Mastering the three challenges, let's pick three that you'll have to master and fight with. Let's say this positive attached article, the 5 past tenses, doubling objects with clitics in a strange word order. Those are just it's an incentive to become a speaker of a Slavic language with Balkan spices, which will bring new perspectives career-wise, travel-wise, intellectual stimulation-wise, relationships-wise. Being able to read Macedonian books, original or translated, will broaden your horizons, and being able to write in Macedonian will make us native speakers very happy. The choice to study a foreign language, in my opinion, is made on the basis of a strong motivation. So if you find yours, please join in. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ducevska. That was a very good introduction, a descriptive introduction to the situation of language.
Students didn't run away, so
Well,
that's fine.
They had a quick grammar lesson today. So that was very, very interesting. Yeah, and we would definitely be interested in talking ideas and so on. I think probably a first step would be to create a network of Macedonian teachers across the world, basically, which would be based online anyway, and it would be quite nice to kind of host it here at some point. And then if part of that network, there are countries such as France with INALCO or other European countries you could, partner in European projects.
Some networking.
Yeah.
Great.
And the last thing I'd like to say is that you have to write your own textbooks because you're very talented and capable, and they will be exactly as you want them to be. And I will definitely encourage you
I
in
knew
that
that this is
direction.
coming. I knew. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, for someone who has experience of teaching a foreign language abroad is very important, and you'd know what you're doing in a textbook. Yeah. So, yeah. We'll take questions at the end, but we'll now pass the floor on to Professor Friedman.
So I can start now, right? Yes?
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
okay, thank you. Alex, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to see and meet you all. I have to mention when I first started teaching about 50 years ago, I was teaching Russian, which is what they made all beginning Slavists do in those days. And I decided to try teaching a Macedonian course. And I told my Russian class how much easier it would be to learn Macedonian than Russian because there were no cases and the accent, the stress was fixed. And a girl in the back of the room raised her hand and said, "What about the verb?" Well, never mind. So today I'm going to speak about Macedonian as a Balkan language, that is Macedonian in the context of its contacts with other languages. And while previous speakers have stressed various advantages and benefits from learning Macedonian, another one is the fact that Macedonian, precisely because it's been in contact with all of its neighboring languages, offers a kind of gateway to a wide variety of languages besides just the Slavic ones. So here, next slide, please. Yeah, great. So this is where Macedonia was from the end of the 14th century until the beginning of the 20th century. It was part of the Ottoman Empire. And during that period, Macedonian was in contact with all the various languages of that empire. Next slide, please. Yeah, no, yeah, good. This is what Macedonia looks like today. As you can see, it's between Bulgarian and Albanian on the one hand, and Serbo-Croatian, former Serbo-Croatian on the north, and Greek, but there's also Aromanian, which is a Romance language, and Romani, which is an Indic language, and Turkish as well, are all spoken in the Republic of North Macedonia. So next slide. Prince Nikolai Trubetskoy, back in International Congress of Linguists in 1928 and the proceedings published in 1930, wrote of the language family that above all, it should be all, not Ali, all displays regular sound correspondences, whereas the Sprachbund, that is the language league, displays a great similarity with respect to syntax, among other things. To be sure, there are various features. Next slide. So this is a nice little representation of the difference between regular sound correspondences on the one hand and morphosyntax on the other. On the left-hand side, you see a computerized diagram for relations among various Malayo-Polynesian, Austronesian languages, and on the right, the relation among various Indo-European languages. And as you can see, Macedonian together with Polish, Russian, and Russian are in the Slavic branch. You have the Baltic branch that's closely related. Romanian is over here. Albanian is over there. Modern Greek is in another place. Similarly, Fijian, Kilivila, and Kiribati, which are three different languages spoken on islands in the Pacific, are in very different places, subgroups in Malayo-Polynesian. Then if we look at the top, as you can see, Macedonian, Modern Greek, Albanian, Romanian, and also Romani are closer to one another than any of them are to the related languages. So Macedonian is closer to Greek, Albanian, and Romanian in terms of its syntax than it is to Russian or Polish or what have you. And similarly, in the case of Malayo-Polynesian, Kiribati, Fijian, and Kilivila are closely related. So the concept of the Sprachbund isn't simply limited to the Balkans, but the Balkans is the first example that was identified as such, and Macedonian is an important part of that. Next slide. So going back to the 19th century, it was in 1829 that Jernej Kopitar first identified the future tense using a particle based on a verb lexically meaning want in what today we would call Balkan Slavic, Albanian, Balkan Romance, Greek, and Romani as being a shared feature. And next slide. This chart shows how the various languages, so we have Greek here at the top, and then in red we've got Slavic, and in blue we have Romance, and then in black down below is Albanian, and in green I added in Romani, and there is something attested. And we start in the medieval period with future constructions that were based on verbs meaning want plus an infinitive. And Aneta mentioned the replacement of the infinitive in Macedonian. And this replacement happened in all the Balkan languages, although to varying degrees in various languages. It happened to the most consistent degree in Macedonian and also in Greek, but even more in Macedonian. And then gradually you got a conjugated want with a subjunctive particle and a conjugated verb, and then the want reduced to a particle plus the subjunctive marker plus a conjugated verb, and then eventually at the end, the particle and a conjugated verb. And what we see here with these lines indicate when the forms first appear in the written record and how long they last, if in some cases to this day. And what we see is that the modern forms, as we see them today, all have their origins during the Ottoman period. It was the Ottoman period that really gave birth to the Balkan Sprachbund as we see it today. So, next slide. Here are the concrete examples. So, Macedonian Keodime, we will go, Bulgarian Stetredneme, and the Torlak dialects, the southernmost dialects of the former Serbo-Croatian, Cheodime. The question of how different Macedonian and Bulgarian are was touched on earlier, and I will just mention here two facts, as it were. Facts. One is that Macedonian and Bulgarian are comparable to the Scandinavian languages, Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish, which have high degree of mutual intelligibility, but are also quite distinct, and everybody who speaks one of these languages recognizes when speakers are speaking the other language. The big difference between the Scandinavian languages on the one hand and Macedonian and Bulgarian on the other is that in Scandinavia, the Danes don't say that Norwegian is a Danish dialect or that Swedish is a Danish dialect. And we have that problem still with the Bulgarians. Too bad. Okay, Greek, we have philo, which becomes tha. Romani has kamam. This is the old verb for want. You may have heard of the Kama Sutra. Kama Sutra actually means the book of love, kama. So kam is want in Romani, and kadas means we will go. In Albanian, do shkoim or do tushkoim. Do tushkoim is literary Albanian, but in the colloquial, especially in the south, they would simply say do shkoim. And then in the Balkan Romance languages, Romanian, Aromanian, Migleno-Romanian, you have the verb, the verb that means want, Latin volo, French vouloir, and so on, with a subjunctive marker and a conjugated verb, although in Aromanian sometimes the subjunctive marker drops, and in Migleno-Romanian we have another development. So this is a map. Next slide, please. This is a map showing the distribution, and you can see how for the Slavic languages, the want future extended almost up to the border with Slovene, but not quite. The Kaikavian dialect also have a future that uses the auxiliary be. Using the auxiliary be is typical of all the Slavic languages except the South Slavic languages south of this big red line. But using a particle derived from the verb want is specifically Macedonian and Bulgarian and the southernmost dialects of the former Serbo-Croatian, whereas in the rest of former Serbo-Croatian, Bosnian, Croatian, Montenegrin, Serbian, the auxiliary conjugates. So that reduction to a particle is a typical Balkan feature. Next slide. This is showing the distribution in Romani, which often doesn't get spoken about when we talk about the Balkan languages. But in fact, Romani is a part of the Balkan Linguistic League. And as you can see here, south of this yellow line, the Romani future is formed just like in the other Balkan languages with the particle want, in this case kap, plus a finite verb. Whereas as you go further north, that tendency weakens in this central band. And then once you get north of the green line, they use a long form called that sounds kerava instead. Another point for Macedonian as a gateway language is that in Macedonia, the Republic of North Macedonia, Romani has official status. It is the only country in the world where Romani is recognized as an official language in the Constitution. It's official at the municipal level in Shuto Orizari district north of Skopje. And people who are interested in learning Romani, because there aren't very many textbooks, there are materials in Macedonian for Romani. So it's a gateway language for that and for other languages as well. Next slide, please. So again, talking about the future, this time in Albanian, which is another very important language in Macedonia, and for which being in Macedonia is it's another language that you can learn. Back in the old days, this isn't so true anymore, but I'm old enough to remember communism and remember when Albania was completely closed and Kosovo and Macedonia were the only places in the world where somebody could study Albanian. And even to this day, there's an Albanian department at the University of Skopje, and so it's available. And my point here in terms of language contact is that the future with have, which is a typical Romance formation, is found in northern Albania, but the future with want actually extends all over Albanian-speaking territory, contrary to what some textbooks say. Okay, next slide. So this is from 1814. This is the oldest identification of a Macedonian feature as a Balkan feature. It was in Martin Leakey's book. Martin Leakey was a British traveler, Hellenist, classicist, I should say. There was no, in those days, Greek was called Roman, it's called Romaic. But he wrote a book called Researches in Greece, in which he described, he published a manual that had examples in Greek, in Albanian, in Aromanian, and in Macedonian. It was the first. This was the original version, the so-called Tetraglosson, was the first published book that had a Macedonian dialect in it. There's older attestations of Macedonian dialects, but they're in manuscripts. And this was the first book published in England with a Macedonian dialect in it, and that was in 1814. And in that book, Leakey identified the post-pose definite article, that is the definite article coming after the noun, which, believe me, if you're a native speaker of English, is not difficult to master. Yes, there are three different ones, the one in V for the close and the N for the distant, but it's really relatively easy. Verbal aspect is much tougher. So the post-pose definite article is based on a deictic pronoun. It's based on a word that meant this or that. And we find this in Albanian, in Balkan Romance, and in Balkan Slavic. So these are examples that were taken actually from Kopitar in 1829. So Albanian has njeri for person and njeriu, the person. Balkan Romance, and omul or omlu for the person, the person. Macedonian has čovek, čovekot in the standard language, čoveko in some of the dialects, čoveka, čovekot, Bulgarian čuvek, čuvekot, čuveko, čuvekot, and in South Serbian, in Torlak, also with at or ut, person and the person. And this is a feature that developed when the ancestors of modern Macedonian and the modern Balkan Romance languages and modern Bulgarian and Southeast Serbian were in the Balkans. So Latin, the ancestor of the modern Balkan Romance languages, had a construction of the type homo ile, meaning person this. So the deictic pronoun could follow the noun, but it wasn't actually attached. So it wasn't really an article. Similarly, Old Church Slavonic, the oldest Slavic language, and the language that was based on a dialect that was spoken in Macedonia around what is now the city of Solun in Macedonian, or Thessaloniki in Greek. The city is in Greece now, but it was a Slavic-speaking city 1,000 or more years ago. And it says in the life of Saint Methodius, who was sent by the Byzantines to Slavs in what is now Slovakia, actually, the former Czechoslovakia. It says in his hagiography, you are a man of Salonika, and all the men of Salonika speak Slavic, or speak good Slavic. Something that makes the Greeks upset, of course, but that's too bad. Balkan Slavic and Balkan Romance developed the post-pose definite article when they were in the Balkans. So what is today Balkan Romance, what is today Macedonian, these developed the current post-pose articles during the Balkan period. So to say that Latin invented it, or that Old Church Slavonic invented it, is just not consistent with the temporal facts. Okay, so back again to this earlier. Next slide, please. Just to show you the red line. I don't know if you can see. You can't. Well, those of you there can see my little hand. This red line is the upper limit of the post-pose definite article. So as you can see, it's typically a feature of Macedonian and Bulgarian and the southeasternmost dialects of Serbian, and goes along with Albanian and also up to Romanian and to Greek. So next slide. This is one that doesn't get talked about very much. This is the use of one to mark the indefinite article, so indefiniteness. And what I did for this chart was I took a bunch of gospel passages. The gospels are great because they've been translated by missionaries into so many different languages, including all the Slavic languages and a number of dialects of Romani and all the Balkan languages. And of course, we have the ancient gospels in Greek, in ancient Greek, and New Testament Greek, Latin, and also Old Church Slavonic. And so I took 9 passages with which in their English translations all have indefinite articles. As you can see in the bottom part there, he sent an executioner, he saw a man unto an exceeding high mountain, casting a net into the sea, there came a leper, and so on and so forth. And I went to compare these with the ancient translations, the Slavic translations, the Balkan translations, and one dialect of Romani that's spoken outside the Balkans, in addition to the English. And as you can see, in the non-Slavic Balkan languages, in Romanian, in Albanian, in Turkish, and in the Arli dialect of Romani, which is spoken in the Balkans, we have indefinite articles almost everywhere that English does. Whereas in the Romani dialect that's spoken outside the Balkans, we don't have indefinite articles except in a couple of passages. And if we look at the ancient, or ancient translation, so if we look at the original New Testament Greek, assuming that the Gospels were written in New Testament Greek and not in Aramaic, and that's somebody else's problem, and in Latin, which is a translation, and the Old Church Slavonic, which is a translation, we can see that there's only one passage out of these entire 9, and that's one that in English is a certain scribe. And that's the only time In all the Slavic languages except Macedonian and Bulgarian, the correspondences are the same as in Old Church Slavonic or in Greek and Latin, whereas in Bulgarian and Macedonian, they're much closer to the situation in modern day Romanian, Albanian, Turkish, as well as Romani. So the development of indefinite marking in conjunction with the development of definiteness marking is a feature of the Balkan languages, even if the indefiniteness marking isn't as widespread as it is, say, in English. Okay, next slide. Here's an example of a construction where Macedonian is a representative of the donor language rather than being part of a large conglomerate. The expression miseyade, literally to me, intransitive marker, it eats, is a way of saying, I feel like eating. Okay, and then I provided a potential direct object, burek, which is a delicious pie made with meat or cheese or spinach or leeks or what have you, which if you get to go to Macedonia, you'll get to eat. And we have exactly the same construction in Aromanian, Yisimuka, in Meglen Romania, Untimunka, in Albanian, Mahahet, in Romani and in Bulgarian, we have the verb coming before the clitics, which is something I'm going to talk about in just a minute. But in the meantime, it's enough to say that it's still the finite verb plus a dative clitic and the intransitive marker. In Greek, the expression mitragiti, which is I feel like eating, only occurs in the Northern Greek dialects. It's not standard Greek in the same way that it's not standard Romanian. So it occurs in the Greek dialects that are in contact with Macedonian and to some extent Bulgarian. But really Macedonian here is one of the drivers of this construction. So next slide. Clitic order. We had a brief mention of this, and I'm going to mention it more. When people want to say what's distinctive about Macedonian, here's a feature that's distinctive about Macedonian in relation to all the other Slavic languages. Macedonian is like Albanian, Balkan Romance, and Greek in requiring preverbal position with finite verbs, even in absolute position. In Bulgarian, Bulgarian ties the clitics to the verb, but does not permit absolute initial position. And Bulgarian, Croatian, Montenegrin, Serbian requires second position regardless of word class. So I just recently came across an article that erroneously stated that Bulgarian clitics are second position. They're not. They're tied to the verb, but they can't occur initially. And next slide, here's an example that really shows this all very nicely, where in Bosnian, Croatian, Montenegrin, and Serbian, I give it to him is I to him, it often give. So ja mu ga često, that's the adverb, dajem, give. So in Bulgarian, as često mu go davam, where the mu and the go, the to him and the it come right before the verb. But they're not in second position, as you can see, because the adverb comes here. And at the same time, in Bulgarian, you could not have what you have in Bulgaria, in Macedonian, which is mugodavam or mugodavam često. There should be a često there. And here we have the illustration of how Macedonian is like Albanian, Romanian, and Greek. So mugodada is I gave it to him. Yada is Albanian, Uldau is Romanian, and Populedosa is Greek. So we see here an example of how Macedonian has come to look more like its non-Slavic neighbors, which is another reason to study Macedonian, because it is a gateway to languages that aren't Slavic. So Zbigniew Golub, my former professor, argues convincingly that the Macedonian perfective in have and the Aromanian perfective in be are the result of mutual calquing. Aromanian is a Romance language that's spoken precisely in Macedonia, as well as southern Bulgaria, northern Greece, and the southwest corner of Bulgaria. Romanian is another minority language that is recognized only in officially recognized only in Macedonia. Only Macedonian has Romanian in its constitution. So Macedonia is again a gateway to another language of Southeastern Europe. Note here, as we approach the next slide, the Romanian feminine corresponds to the Slavic neuter because Romanian, like Albanian, has only two genders, masculine and feminine. And all the neuter nouns ended up merging with feminine. There are some exceptions, but that's for a different lecture. So, next slide. Here's to show you how when the Slavs arrived in the Balkans, and the Slavic speakers arrived in the Balkans in the 6th and 7th centuries of the Common Era, so during the Byzantine period. When they arrived in the Balkans, their perfect consisted of a conjugated verb be, which in modern Macedonian is sum, and a past resultative participle in el. So sum večeral is I have eaten. In the meantime, the Latin speakers that they encountered, of whom the descendants are the Romanian speakers of today, used the verb have with a past passive participle, which eventually ended up in the feminine, unagreeing feminine form. So amtsinata, the C here is that represents a ts sound. Amtsinata is literally I have eaten. In southwestern Macedonia, speakers calqued the Romance form, and we ended up with imam vecerano. So I have dined, where here is a neuter. This is a neuter past passive participle and corresponds morphologically exactly to the Romanian sinata, and imam corresponds to am. Meanwhile, in Romanian, they calqued, they loan translated the Slavic sum večeral, and so in Romanian, you also have the construction escutinată, which means I am having dined. And then in southwestern Macedonia, but also elsewhere, they calqued the Romance be plus past passive participle so that you also have the construction sum večeran, which doesn't mean I have been dined, but I have dined. So, for example, in Ohrid, for example, or elsewhere, you can say yadensum, and yadensum doesn't mean I have been eaten, but I have eaten. Doiden so he has come. So it's a nice example of mutual influence between Balkan Romance and Macedonian. And this construction, okay, next slide. This construction has its origins in the southwest of what is still Macedonian-speaking territory. It spread to the north and to the east. You can see in the corner map up here, the star is where the origins are. It spreads northeast, so that today all over Macedonia, the ima perfect, the have perfect is used, even as far east as Berovo on the Bulgarian border. Even people who are my age, and I'm 74, so still now use this perfect. And this perfect also extended along northern Greece, along what used to be the Via Egnatia, a region where there were Roman military outposts throughout the Roman period. So Latin continued to be spoken there, and you find this construction. Okay, next slide. This is another example of Romance influence on Macedonian and also Bulgarian influence on Romanian. So we see two different linguistic ecologies operating here. And it's another way that Macedonian and Bulgarian differ. So in the case of Macedonian, the Romanian type of pluperfect, where the past tense or the imperfect of have, so aviam fapta is I had made, and this is Macedonian imaf napraveno. Whereas in Bulgarian, there's an older pluperfect of the type biach napravil, but there's napravil, but there's also bil sum napravil, and this use of be, sum is Bulgarian for I am. This was calqued into Romanian, so in Romanian they have fost fakut, for I had done. There's also an older version. But what's interesting here is that the imav napraveno, the southwestern and western in general form, has now more or less replaced the old inherited pluperfect in most of Macedonian, although speakers from Eastern Macedonia still use this older form themselves. Okay, next slide. So to get to my conclusion, the conditions of multilateral, multi-generational, mutual multilingualism, and here it's important to stress that in Macedonia, people spoke each other's languages. There's a proverb, "Jazyci se bogatstvo," languages are wealth. And this proverb exists in all the languages of the Balkans. I have examples, I didn't show one today. You have folk songs from villages where one line is in Greek, one line is in Macedonian, and one line is in Albanian. So this conditions and everyday language contact, especially at the local level and especially in conversation, led to convergences at all linguistic levels, and especially in morphosyntax for the languages of the Balkan Sprachbund. Some features are found in all the Balkan languages, and especially those that got their start during the Ottoman period, for example, the want future. Then again, features like the post-post definite article did not arise in Balkan Romance and Balkan Slavic until after their arrival in the Balkans. So it is a Balkan feature, as is definite marking in general. Greek and Romany both have definite articles, although they're preposed. And so Albanian also has preposed definiteness marking. Some features are more strongly expressed in certain languages. So, for example, indefinite marking, as I just mentioned, and the construction with feel like that I spoke about. And finally, some Balkan features are distinguished Macedonian from all the other Slavic standard languages and are shared with non-Slavic Balkan languages, for example, the have, perfect, clitic order, and also many dialectal features. So Macedonian is, as we've heard, an extraordinarily rich language, and it is a language that is a gateway not only to other Slavic languages, but also to other Balkan languages. Well, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor
Thank
Friedman.
you. This was amazing.
It was a wonderful historical, linguistic, and language contact description of the place of Macedonian in the Sprachbund area. We also teach a course which is called Languages in Contact Along the Danube. Maybe you'll accept to be a guest lecturer one day.
Sure, sure.
Coaching.
Yeah, and I'll also make sure that your coming book, Balkan Languages, will be acquired by the CIS Library. We really need it. We also have an event via PROLang in May that's coming up on endangered and minoritized languages in Europe, and a Romanian will be one of them.
Great.
So I'll send you a link for you to join if you want.
Thank you.
Another event that we're planning, but it's not yet confirmed, would be one about Romany as well. So probably we need you a lot.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So Ana, you'll manage the questions, yeah, because you'll know where to direct them.
Okay.
So
Do we have any questions?
yeah, I'll do you. Yeah.
If not, I have one. So.
Yeah, you start. Yeah. No questions yet online, but if there are some, I'll let you know. But we can take the questions from the room.
Yeah. Okay. Questions
Or impressions or thoughts.
please.
A comment to the question. The comment just about the article, and as you know, I end up putting up the end of many English words. Can't think of less anymore, and it does actually come very naturally. I had a question about teaching, and Duolingo is like a very obvious place that is maybe useful to people, but also as an advertising which I really thought about getting Macedonian into Duolingo as a student.
I can answer that. even though I said do not address any questions to me. But yes, we were thinking about it, so that's why I had a meeting with them, but they're not interested into adding Macedonian into, because they said that there is no interest. So we need to bring the interest first so they can add Macedonian on their agenda. Even they put Ukrainian language because of the war, but I don't want to be war in Macedonia, so the language can be added. But there is no interest for them to put the language. That's the main thing. So it would be useful as a tool for language learning, but there is no interest. So that's a shame.
Following on from that, how do we create?
Yes, that's-
What is their, what do they consider to be interest?
Yeah, Nick, that's really interesting question.
Probably numbers,
Well,
numbers of
the reason why I
languages,
ask
yeah.
us coming
Yeah.
from, an Australian perspective, I say an Australian perspective, I'm sure there's thousands of people there who most people don't have any access or don't have the, they don't really have the time except using an app to learn the language. And I'm sure there's thousands amongst the Australian Macedonians in Australia that would love to have something like that. So that's why I'm just curious, is what they consider to be interest.
They would come off their
Interest is there,
textbooks.
they just-
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you, both of you, Philip and Nick, as well. Any other questions, comments? Feel free to ask. We are very nice people. I'm not biting or anything. Or shall I go and you look like you have a question. Yes, you.
I mean, I was gonna say, like, how do we get, so we've got it in evening courses, and I'm a master's student overseas, and I would love to learn Macedonian.
Great.
If there was possibility for it. It's just that thing of, it's great that we have the evening courses, and like speaking to other students at CEAS, the real question is like, how do we get this into graduate programs? And it's the same, Macedonian is not an isolated incident of that. So for example, Lithuanian is not offered, Latvian is not offered. What are the steps to get it to kind of
I should answer that one.
Yes,
Yeah.
please do, but it's an
Yeah, so
excellent question.
It's an excellent question. It's a wonderful request and we have it as well. So it's simply, again, resources. It comes down to resources mainly. And to someone taking on the kind of course description, writing and proposing for a degree. So that's the case even with Albanian, and Albanian is a big community in this country. So it's only offered at evening classes. So that's why we are so pleased and proud that we can offer this program in the evening, because we fill in gaps that exist in the day in the degree courses. Yeah, so we only offer 10 languages for degrees and 18 in evening classes. So the ones you mentioned are only offered in evening classes. At the moment, we're working on introducing Slovene as a degree. Maya, the Slovene teacher, has been working on it for 4 years. It has to go through many committees, and it just comes down to this kind of logistics, but we're not giving up, and we would definitely like to see more languages represented at degree level. Yeah, usually the easiest way to do that is to start with offering it as an MA language, because interest there will be very honed in and you know, strong. Yeah, if someone wants to learn a language at MA level, that means that they are doing a research, you know, in that area. So usually we start with offering it at MA level, and then and the other thing is that in the UK, as you probably all know, there's been a big decline in learning languages and language degrees. So obviously, with these European languages, as we call them in this very generic way, which is not very accurate, the situation is even more dire. But given the context, probably we are doing well, but not as well as we would like to. So yeah, of course, we would like to have students joining in year one for a language degree all the time, and we don't, not just in certain languages, but across languages, we find it quite hard to recruit. So, but I mean, one of the aims of PROLang is to promote languages. So if you have ideas, just approach me. And it would be great to form any kind of advocacy groups to change the situation. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's very important.
That's why we have to work together.
Yes, absolutely. And it's the same with a few other languages. So yeah.
Is
Uh,
the
join
recording will be
degrees or-
available?
Yes, of course. Yeah, it will be available on the PROLang page. Yeah, on the
Okay,
PROLang
so
link, yeah.
recording will be available.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also there is one question in the audience here.
We can swap.
Will the AI, let me just.
Yeah.
Is not the question. Oh, it's here. Thanks for the amazing talk. Will AI technology help Macedonian to establish itself and grow through creating online teaching content? No, God, no. Creating better translation resources. No, do not replace me with AI, please.
You won't be replaced, I cannot
No,
replace.
it will be a good tool, but I don't know, maybe Professor Friedman can answer this one with the AI technology. I don't know.
It's a very, very interesting question.
Yeah.
I would say that I mean, AI technology is amazing.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a lot of concern over its use and misuse and so on and so forth. But I think it does have very significant potential. I'll give you an example. My partner studies Macedonia, and you know, I make it to we make it to Macedonia every year, and he works on Macedonian. And one of the ways he's working on it now is he will take a sentence in Macedonian and paste it into Google Translate, see what Google Translate comes up with, and then on the basis of that, see whether it's a good translation or not. And that's just a simple example of how artificial technology can be used as a teaching tool. So I think the potential there is very significant. It's a matter of people doing the work to harness it. Yep, that's my answer.
Thank you, Blagodaram. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah,
The thing is, follow on from that,
Yeah.
because of the nature of AI, especially when we've got our LLMs that are forming the basis, like platforms like ChatGPT. Macedonian, like many other languages, is a low resource language when it comes to the internet. So what efforts are being applied to ensure that Macedonia has a presence on the net to provide the information for, say, for instance, ChatGPT?
Yeah, another very interesting question. Yes, I'm also thinking about ChatGPT, and ChatGPT it's not very good in Macedonian.
Yeah.
Have you ever played with it?
Yeah.
Did you try?
Yeah.
I mean, the answers are just like, well, yeah, it's
Well, that would be a good European project to kind of
Yeah.
provide materials to kind of feed them into the ChatGPT so it can produce better results. It's the same with Romanian, which is a bigger language if you want. It's doing very badly in
Yeah.
AI and
It's
ChatGPT.
well,
Yeah,
it's a problem basically.
Yeah.
If any of them, other than the top 10 languages.
Correct.
actually, it's-
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because ChatGPT just get the text like online and it can be anything, but then it's not even that, it predicts the
Yeah.
words. So sometimes it's just like gibberish
Yeah.
Yeah.
anyway. So at the same time, I'm glad that it's like that. So I'm not going to be replaced by it. I'm kidding, but
You will
Martin, you didn't scare me. It's just like there was another question, good one. It wasn't a question, online on Twitter. It was like Nikola Ljubesic kind informed us because there is a release of the 512 million words in Macedonian Klasla web corpus. Nick, are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay, the first that is like annotated corpus of Macedonian language, and now it became available 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. So I'm just curious, maybe to ask Professor Ducevska as well, how can we incorporate this corpus into language teaching, for
Yeah.
example?
If it's finished,
It is.
this is a new information.
Yeah.
For me.
We only
I'm
just heard
not
about
sure, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
we'll
heard
have to
about
check,
it.
and then we'll of course, we can, it's also a tremendously good tool, the
Yeah.
corpuses, but I'll have to check. I don't know about this. Thank you.
Yeah,
Clearing it.
of course, we can talk about that. Yeah, that it's about that clearing. They started with Slovene and then with Serbian, Croatian, but now they put it Macedonian as well, which is wow, which is great. And I think that it will be
I
really
don't know,
useful.
yeah.
Any thoughts, Professor Friedman, about how we can incorporate this language corpus into teaching Macedonian? If you have any thoughts about it.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of at this point is it's, you know, those language corpora are amazing resources for research. So, you know, in terms, especially, you know, teaching second and third year language is in many respects way more difficult than teaching first year language, because first year language, you're just getting started and you know, every day is a new achievement. And then it becomes a bit of a slog in the second and third years. And I think that with language corpora, it might be possible to design pedagogical tools that would effectively engage student interest. So I guess that's my answer.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Whatever, it's helpful. We
Yeah.
are just it's a great. I was really happy to for that information, so we can do more about it. I think that maybe people can check words, so and they can see how they're used in different contexts, so they can connect. Those are just my thoughts for anyone who is interested. Any other question, comment? Feel free to add whatever. Do you enjoy the event? More enthusiastically, yes.
Yeah, there is a question at the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so the question not really best to ask maybe Professor Friedman, but
Yeah.
just in terms of like obviously the ancestry of all these languages in common Slavic, what was the point at which this like diverged? So when Macedonians, I guess, diverged from BCS or Bulgaria, I don't want to start the linguistic debate, but just generally, when did you say that starts to happen, and why?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Was that for me?
Loud.
Yeah,
If it was for me, is there a microphone where the person could come to?
Would you mind coming forward, please? Sorry.
Yeah, maybe you can sit over there. Yes, in the first row. Yeah.
So I said,
Yeah, just in the first row. Yeah, the microphone is over there.
In front of the camera.
Oh, this is just a microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I
better.
just wondered, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wondered when the basically Macedonian started to diverge from, I guess, its closest neighbours, so I guess Bulgarian and BCS, given the common ancestry of all the Slavic languages. Thank you.
Okay, sure. The Macedonian dialects were already beginning to diverge. I mean, as let's put it this way. Common Slavic is assumed to have begun differentiation at some time prior to the South Slavic migrations into the Balkans, which is to say sometime prior to the 6th century of the Common Era. In fact, what happened in Slavic, what it looks like what happened is there was a tremendous amount of, well, first we have to back up. So Slavic emerged as a distinct language. Slavic begins as a dialect of Indo-European, right? So Slavic emerges as a distinct language at some point, somewhere around what is today the Polish, Belarusian, and Ukrainian borders, roughly that area. And there must have been significant dialectal differentiation, which was then erased because the Slavic that came into the Balkans is so close to the common Slavic that we can reconstruct that it couldn't go back all the way to Indo-European. In the same way, the situation is like that with ancient Greek. We know that ancient Greek was had diverged into a variety of very distinct dialects: the Attic, the Ionic, the Doric, the Aeolic, and so on. And the only reason we know this is because people had writing and wrote in those dialects. In fact, around the time of Alexander, who was known as Alexander the Great in the West and as Alexander the Terrible in Persia, the Attic dialect began to take over all the other Greek dialects, so that all of modern Greek, with the exception of a little bit of Tsakonian in the corner of the Peloponnese, is descended from a single Greek dialect. And the only reason we can reconstruct all the rest is because of what's written down. In the case of Slavic, something similar must have happened. So Slavic diverged into many dialects, and then there was some event, perhaps a military event, that resulted in a interdialectal koine, a generalized dialect, a common dialect that sort of overlay all the others. And it was that dialect that was brought into the Balkans. Now, that dialect was already in the process of diverging by the time the Slavs arrived in the 6th century. So we can say that, in some sense, the dialects that would become Macedonian had already begun to diverge in the early Middle Ages. And then in terms of the written evidence that we have, we can already figure out approximately where a given manuscript was written on the basis of the dialect features in that manuscript. So even though the various South Slavic dialects remain to this day relatively close, the divergence had already begun in the early Middle Ages. And then if you want to say, okay, so at what point do we say this is Macedonian and this is Bulgarian and that's Serbian? That's a trickier question, and is really tied to the problem of when does modernity begin? Does modernity begin with Christopher Columbus in 1492? Did people wake up on August 4th, 1492 and say, okay, we're modern now? That's not how it works, right? So deciding when a given dialect becomes a separate language is to some extent an arbitrary decision. So for example, when does the Latin that was spoken in France become Old French? Okay, well, there's actually a specific date that's assigned to it, and it's a date of a particular document that has enough characteristics that people say, all right, that we're going to call this Old French. So when do we say, okay, this is in Macedonian? Well, there are already medieval manuscripts that are clearly in dialects that are ancestral to what is today Macedonian, as opposed to what is today Bulgarian. So Bulgarian and Macedonian, and Serbian for that matter, had already begun to diverge in the Middle Ages. And they were, the beginnings of those divergences go back to the early Middle Ages, and by the early modern period, the dialects that are today what are ancestral to what is today Macedonian were clearly Macedonian. So there's a manuscript from Greece from the city that in Greek is Kastoria and in Macedonian is Kostur. And it is a lexicon from the 16th century. And it's very clearly in a Macedonian that looks like the dialect of Macedonian that's spoken today in that region, when the Greek police aren't stopping them, that is. So, so in terms of official recognition, when did people start saying what I'm speaking is Macedonian? That is the 19th century, but that was also when people started saying that what I'm speaking is Bulgarian in the modern sense. I have a published manuscript. I don't know if you can see this. Am I showing up on the screen there? I don't know. It doesn't matter. This is an anonymous Ottoman dictionary of the 19th century. And it is a dictionary that is called in Turkish Bulgarca Osmanlıca. So it's a Bulgarian Ottoman dictionary. But and it was written in Skopje, but the dialect in that dictionary is actually from Bosnia. It's in Bosnian. Okay, and my point here is that the names of what people spoke shifted over time. So even if people weren't calling what they spoke at the time Macedonian, nevertheless, those dialects were in fact the dialects that became the basis of modern Macedonian. And already by the middle of the 19th century, it was very clear that what the Bulgarians were starting to push as their literary language wasn't what people were speaking in Macedonia. And the real conflict is documented from the middle of the 19th century. And by the end of the 19th century, it was already very clear, and people were publishing it in print, that we're Macedonians, what we speak is Macedonian, and we're not Bulgarian, and Bulgarians are somebody else. So you get a lot of talk, especially in Bulgaria, that Macedonian language and identity were invented by Tito after World War II. That is, to put it bluntly, false. To put it mildly, it's false. To put it delicately, it's false. Macedonian was already distinct, and people were aware of its distinctiveness in the 19th century. And the decisions of Osnom that Aneta Ducevska referred to in her talk were a confirmation of a situation that was already being practiced. It was not the creation of something that hadn't already been there. So I guess that's my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is one more question for you, Professor Friedman. Can you see it on the screen?
Oh, on the chat. All right, hang on, let me look. Is it in the chat?
We could read it out. So do you notice any current processes of cross-pollination between Macedonian and other Balkan languages that may lead to new similarities in their grammar?
Oh, that's a great question. And yes, indeed. What's happening at the moment is all on the local level. So, for example, here in Macedonia, you have Macedonians who speak Albanian and Albanians who speak Macedonian. Those are the two largest languages in Macedonia. And there are changes that are taking place in local varieties of both Albanian and Macedonian as a result of language contact. I'll give you a couple of examples. So in the Albanian of Macedonia, to explain this, I'm gonna give you a line from Jack and the Beanstalk, which is a fairy tale that some of you may remember. And the line goes, fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread. So the be he alive or be he dead, that means whether he is alive or not, right? but it uses a B. The B here is a kind of a subjunctive. Now in Macedonian, you can use an old perfect there, bilo. Bilo živ, bilo mrtov, okay? Whether alive, whether dead. And that bilo actually corresponds to an Albanian verb form in other usages. That verb form is called the admirative. And I'm not going to go into a lot of details. I'm just going to say this. Albanian has an optative. So the Albanian equivalent would have been kjofte I gjall, kjofte I vdekur. But in the Macedonian of Albanian of Macedonia, they use kenka. And the kenka, it corresponds exactly to bilo in terms of its grammar. So that's an example of Macedonian influence on Albanian here in Macedonia at the local level. On the other hand, for example, in Macedonian, the way to form imperfective verbs, the most common way, is with uva. Okay, so prasha, ask, prashuva, imperfective. However, in non-native speakers of Macedonia in Macedonia are using uva more productively. It's typical of languages in contact. So, for example, the imperfective of doide, to come, is doagya, but you also hear people saying doiduva. And so the generalization of uva is taking place in Macedonia in part owing to language contact. Now, these phenomena that I'm just talking about are at this point local phenomena. Whether they would emerge and enter into the standard languages is something that will take place after I'm gone, because it takes a long time, because standard languages are very conservative, and you get all kinds of articles about how terrible it is that people don't know how to speak anymore, and so on and so forth. Languages change. One of my favorite examples is from English. There's a loss of the nominative accusative distinction in pronouns. For example, no modern day, well, very few, if any, modern day speakers of English know, in America at least, know the difference between who and whom. They don't know, they just don't know how to use them. But most people still know how to use I and me. So for example, he saw me. You wouldn't say he saw I, okay? But you get people who'll say things like between you and I, right? And it should be between you and me. And these changes are taking place to the point where that between you and I actually came out of my mouth once when I was talking without thinking. I guess to get back to the essence of your question, new varieties certainly have the potential to arise, but it's going to be a while. At this point, it's on the dialectal level, it's on the local level, and so that's what needs to be studied right now.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Professor Friedman. Last question for tonight.
Yeah.
It's good from there. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor, for clarifying that Macedonian and Bulgarian are totally separate languages. But is it a danger that Macedonian language is going to be Bulgarian dialect? Because under EU pressure, because now in order Macedonia to be accepted in EU, Bulgaria demands that Macedonia to accept that it's Bulgarian language in order to get accepted in EU. Same thing was happening with EU, pressurized Macedonia to change the name in order to come into EU. So is it a danger that Macedonian language is going to be Bulgarian just with political pressure from EU and other countries? Yeah, thank you.
Actually, the current situation is that the Macedonian language has been recognized by the EU as a distinct language, and the Bulgarian demand that it be treated as a dialect of Bulgarian has been summarily dismissed. That was a no-go. So that specific issue is not a danger for Macedonian. The current situation has to do with putting Bulgarians into the constitution as an ethnic minority. And, you know, technically there are people in Macedonia who either identify as or maybe even are Bulgarian. A friend of mine suggested that the way they should revise the Constitution is to list every single ethnicity that was declared in the last census. And say the Macedonian is the state of everybody. That's an issue where I'm going to leave it to the lawyers to whack it out. Another, you know, there's a real problem with the Bulgarians and the you know, the Bulgarian pressure from the EU. I recognize that, and it causes me significant distress, personal distress even. However, I will say that when it comes to the Macedonian language, at least on that issue, the EU has already affirmed the distinctness of the Macedonian language. So that at least is a settled matter.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Professor
you. I just want to add a final thought. Our language is not going to disappear. As long as we teach and learn it and we create something, keep it alive. Yeah, thank you. So let's keep it alive. When we have some, I don't know, events, do not listen to Serbian music. I don't mind Serbian music, but let's start with Macedonian, for example, and try to dance in Macedonian music, and let's create something. Let's do a poetry. Let's create in the language. So it's not going to disappear if we do something about it, and not just standing here and be scared. Oh, it's going to disappear. It's not going to disappear.
Let me just jump in here, if I may.
Thank you.
It's also a popular belief in Serbia that Macedonian songs are better than Serbian songs. But no, what I really wanted to say was, when people talk about Macedonian being endangered, well, here in Macedonia, it's just fine. The children on the street, little kids playing in the schoolyard are screaming at each other in Macedonian. They're not screaming in some other language. Parents talk to their children in Macedonian. As long as children are learning the language is not endangered. Languages are endangered when the children stop speaking it. And that is not happening in Macedonia.
Great. Thank you. That is a nice final. So, yeah.
Did you want to say something?
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been
Well,
lovely discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, with this wonderful
Thank you.
conclusion, we'll bring the event to an end tonight. Thank you so much for coming. And it's very
Thank you.